7:36, Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. It's been quite the morning. Just a few minutes ago, Donald Trump, and he was talking about, outside of Air Force One, he was talking about the fact that he says Israel was heading to Iran to retaliate against an earlier strike. This is what the president said.
Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I'd never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because of one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what they're doing. Do you understand that?
Senator Bill Haggerty is joining us on the Newsmaker Hotline. Senator, I know you're busy, so let's get right to it. You just heard President Trump, and he's clearly irritated with both countries. It seems like he's really frustrated, though, with Israel as he is trying to keep this ceasefire together. What are your thoughts this morning?
Well, I think President Trump has done something that absolutely had to take place. If you think about it, Dan, he has taken decisive action at a point where he had already issued a deadline, which Iran violated. He's issued a red line with respect to their enrichment of nuclear materials. Iran violated that. And rather than follow a page in the Barack Obama playbook, what President Trump did was he actually demonstrated American resolve and demonstrated the fact that he will not tolerate this anymore. And he did it in a way that was extremely surgical and precise because he did the one thing that the Israelis could not do, and that was drop bunker bombs on these three sites that are far too deep for the Israeli munitions and ordnance to get to. That was decisive, and now what he's called for is a ceasefire because he wants this to come to an end. He's tired of seeing lives lost in Iran and in Israel. And I certainly understand his comment. These nations have been at war for decades. If you think about it, Iran may have unloaded, everything or close to everything they have. I think Israel's trying to put themselves in the best possible position to negotiate, but they have to stop. They have to stop, as President Trump has said. He's going to be the one to bring this peace deal to closure. I think you've got an issue with the Iranian leadership. They're trying to demonstrate to their own people of Iran, and again, this is a propaganda machine within Iran. The theocracy there is trying to demonstrate that they're still fighting, even though they gave us all sorts of warning before they launched a series of missiles. They did that in a way that we could take all of them out. I think what they're trying to do is survive. That is, the theocratic regime is trying to survive within Iran. I think President Trump sees that. He knows this is the time to negotiate, and Israel needs to stop the fighting and stand up and be ready to accept, I hope, what will be a deal that will bring about long-lasting peace in the Middle East.
Senator, you're talking about the theocratic regime of Iran. I know there's been a lot of conversation amongst conservatives about trying to force regime change. Where do you stand on that?
I think that that's up to the Iranian people. What we've done is we followed through on what actually involved American interest. That is, to see Iran not have nuclear capability. I mean, can you imagine if they did have nuclear capability, the types of threats that they would be undertaking, not only in the Middle East, but around the world, the type of launch capacity that they're working on. Iran has a space program. Come on, they're not going to the moon. They're building this program so they can design intercontinental ballistic missiles that will hit our continent. It has to stop. It had to stop. We've talked about this administration after administration after administration, and President Trump has had enough. The Iranians so played Joe Biden that we were in a position that they're very close to being able to break out with the ability to deliver enriched uranium in a way that would give them the atomic bomb that they have been hoping for. And with that atomic bomb, again, that would disrupt any opportunity for peace and stability in that entire region. And frankly, I think their designs would be to threaten the entire world. So that is over. This theocracy is going to have to decide whether they're going to allow the Iranian people to thrive again. It came very close under Barack Obama, but Barack Obama turned the other way, didn't help the Iranian people when they called for it, and the theocracy has maintained control. I think now the Iranian people have seen, in bold display that this theocracy is a paper tiger. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens, but it's up to the people of Iran to make that decision. I don't think the United States needs to be in nation-building form. We're not. We don't have boots on the ground. We're not calling for an invasion. Let the Iranian people make the decision.
I wrote this down this morning, Senator Bill Haggerty. Don't trust, but verify. Now, my concern is that we come to some sort of an agreement with Iran, but how do we ensure they're not pursuing nuclear weapons under the guise of peace? Or do you think that they're ready for that kind of transparency where the inspections have to be done by either Israel or America?
Dan, you raise a great question, because they certainly have not proven their capability to do that. They've operated in secret. We found out even after Obama signed the JCPOA, the so-called Iran deal, they continued their nuclear weapons program. We're going to have, if anything is going to satisfy this president, it's going to be something that's independently verified by a third party, whether it's the United States, Israel, the IAEA, whomever it is. There's going to have to be complete transparency and complete access. No more of this bunker stuff. No more of Iran deciding what can be inspected and when. It's just, it's shocking how weak the Biden administration was. I worked for President Trump. I was the U.S. ambassador to Japan in his first administration. My job was to go to the Prime Minister of Japan and get the Japanese to stop buying Iranian crude oil. They're one of the biggest customers in the world. And Japan, eventually, it wasn't easy, but eventually I got them to stop buying Iranian crude. And that happened around the world, Dan. We brought Iran almost to their knees from a financial standpoint. Their reserves were down to about $4 billion, which is tiny compared to the size of their nation and their economy. And what happens? John Kerry, former Secretary of State, tells the Iranians, wait and see what happens with the election. Wait and see what happens with the 2020 election. The Democrats get back in power. We'll do a different deal. Don't do a deal with Trump right now. Joe Biden comes into office. The first thing he does is stop enforcing the sanctions we'd worked so hard to put in place. Funds start flowing to Iran. They take the Houthis off of the terrorist watch list. This is one of Iran's proxies. The Houthis immediately use Iranian technology and funds to hit Saudi. You saw what happened with Hamas in October of 2023. The amount of terror that Biden allowed to be fomented and fund was enormous. And Israel acted with resolve themselves, and they took Hamas out. They took Hezbollah out. They demonstrated to the Iranian people that Israel could penetrate Iranian soil and territory. They launched from within Iran. They detonated bombs within Iran. And Syria has fallen now, so Iran's lifeline to Lebanon is cut off. And also, Israel has taken out Iran's capability of having any sort of air control. This was the time to bring the theocracy to the table, back to a point of maximum pressure and maximum leverage. Again, I think the Israelis have gotten the message now from President Trump. The time is now to come to the table and strike the deal that you talked about, one that's verifiable, one that we know that we can be certain of, and make certain that the Iranians never, ever have access to nuclear weapons. Their nuclear program needs to come to an end.
Senator Tim Kaine is pushing a vote to limit President Trump's actions in Iran. Seems silly to me, the Democrats running around screaming about impeachment. What's your thoughts on the Democrats and how they've been responding to all of this?
There's not been they're calling for a declaration of war before a president can act. That hasn't happened since World War II. This is just typical histrionics. I think what it does is it demonstrates to the American people that the moment that Democrats actually do have power, that is, if we were to lose the House of Representatives, they will immediately go into impeachment mode. That's all they care about, is power here domestically. They wouldn't lock arms with us and say, look, we stand with the president. We stand with the decisive action. We want to see this. We want to see peace brought to the Middle East. No, they'd rather just continue to play politics here domestically. And this is yet another stunt. It will not pass. It's just another stunt to try to create the sense that America isn't with President Trump at a time when we all should be standing strong and locking arms together and put partisanship aside.
All right, let's talk about the spending bill real quick. Of course, the July 4th deadline is coming up. Right now, you're involved in all of this. What are the biggest sticking points in what Donald Trump calls the big, beautiful bill?
Well, one of the most important and overarching matters is to make many of the provisions of the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act permanent. What that will do, Dan, is actually stimulate long-term capital investment in the United States of America. When the 2017 Act was passed, we saw more capital investment than anyone had counted on at the Congressional Budget Office. And we saw the Congressional Budget Office baseline projections beaten. This is the tax revenue. the tax revenue exceeded the CBO's estimate by more than $1 trillion. Whatever the CBO does to make these calculations, I would rank it somewhere on the spectrum between voodoo and malpractice. They completely miss the point. They don't ascribe growth to the capital investment that we're trying to incentivize. So what stands in the way? We're trying to do the math so that we can actually extend these provisions to a point of permanence. The way the CBO calculates it is they view that as a deduction, not an increase in economic activity. They just see the loss of tax revenues on a static basis. That math is fundamentally wrong, but that's where we are, trying to navigate that, working with Medicaid, trying to make certain that Medicaid is actually going to people who are deserving of it, and to put a work requirement in place. To think that the Democrats shy away from putting a work requirement in place for able-bodied people who are single, that are in working age, that don't have dependents. Somehow that's going to be the end of the world for them. What they want is a culture of dependency, and to continue to extend taxpayer-funded benefits to people everywhere they can. This has got to be reined in. Our spending problem is enormous. And so what we're trying to do is put a more conservative cut on this than what we got from the House, but at the same time navigate it so that the House can actually pass it, and we can put this bill on President Trump's desk as soon as we possibly can.
What's the over-under on a July 4th meeting that deadline?
So I was with Leader Thune last night till about 9 o'clock. He is dead serious about keeping us here till the 4th of July to get it done. He's certainly he's expressing resolve himself. I think we're going to do it. I think we'll get there. These are painful trade-offs that have to be made. There's a lot of discussion, a lot of thoughtful discussion that's going on, and our staffs are working around the clock right now. So I think we'll be in a position in the Senate to get it to a place that will work, that we're ready to send it over to the House before the 4th of July. And I'll compliment Leader Thune and Speaker Johnson. They have been talking and coordinating on a daily basis to make sure that what we do deliver is something that the House of Representatives can get passed, and we can get it in front of the President as quickly as we possibly can. And again, the July 4th deadline for the Senate is in place right now, and I'd say you'd have to say odds are that we meet that deadline. All right,
Senator, always great to speak with you, and have a great rest of week. Senator Bill Haggerty joining us on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. And Joan Jones is in the WTN newsroom. Joan, what do we got coming up?
Yeah, we've got all the latest for you on the dust-up between President Trump and Bibi Netanyahu as the two spar over the reaction to Iran and a ceasefire. Also, McDonald's is bracing for a boycott. We'll tell you what's behind that coming up here at 8 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
The Chad Benson Show.
It's not about Musk. I mean, he's right. You're going to bankrupt America as long as you're not in charge, right? You want to be the captain of the Titanic up until the point that you crash to the iceberg. Then you don't want to be the captain. Then it's like, I wasn't there. Sorry about that. It was another kid that did that.
The Chad Benson Show today from noon to 3 p.m.
And streaming on the Super Talk 99.7 WTN app.
All right, listen, I got to tell you,